is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the Media Mothership.
Okay, welcome to Media Mothership, broadcasting out of Edge Radio Studios in Nipaluna, Hobart, Tasmania. I'm your host, Dr. Craig, joined by...
Dr. Taylor.
Is your mic not on?
It doesn't sound like it.
All right, let's go.
I said Dr. Taylor just as a joke.
Why? Yeah, you know, at least with Lord Taylor, you've got a vague gesture at some... rationale and authenticity of it. How can you pivot towards Doctor? Have you just applied in some
the
bizarre...
future?
Oh right, this is a future kind of narrative.
Yeah,
possibly alternate world.
Yeah, no, not alternate world. I will be going for my PhD sometime.
Yeah. You are capable of doing that.
Thank you.
Squeaky. So we explore, as we do each week, how media can shape our understanding of the world around us. We're streaming on edgeradio.org.au and on YouTube and Twitch. And if you'd like to reach out to us, you can shoot us a message on our in-studio SMS number, 0488 11707. That number again, do you remember the number?
0488
888
173
and so
664.
so close. You're like asking ChatGPT. It's like you do it with conviction. 0488 11707, or you can message us on the YouTube or Twitch stream. Today's topic. Last week we looked at the narrative hook concept in the famous radio drama Sorry, Wrong Number. And we looked at the idea of the hook. That's the narrative device used to hopefully excite the interest from a audience member, a reader, a listener.
I think it worked.
What was the hook in the segment we heard from Sorry, Wrong Number?
The hook?
The hook. What was the thing that hooked you in, feeling you wanted to listen to more?
Just the fact that there was something going down. And it was going to attack a woman in a house, and she was a woman in a house?
Yeah, so she had overheard, through a cross line, a conversation between two villainous types plotting the murder of a woman. And she had overheard that by accident as she was trying to dial get to another number, but the operator had accidentally put her in another number. That's 1940.
I don't remember that year.
Yeah, 1940s.
Yeah.
Offhand, 1943. So last week was Hook. This week I want to step it up with some further discussion of narrative storytelling. I want to go a bit big picture first and ask it in terms of a broader question about, why storytelling seems to dominate so much of life around us. Obviously, we're surrounded by movies and television, but the thing I was interested in, as I was putting together notes for today's episode, was, why do we, in many ways, end up narrating our own life or explaining real and non-fictional things as if they were stories, as if they were novels. Right?
I don't do that, said Taylor gruffly.
Like you say, hi, how was your day? And you go, it was just like Alice in Wonderland. And they go, what? You traveled through a portal into another land? Yes, exactly. Well, and it's unlikely to be that narrative, but you might say, it was like a movie or a gesture like that.
It was like a movie. So today was exactly like Alien.
Well, dare I ask more? I know you've been doing some internship teaching?
Yeah,
placement teaching?
Professional placement.
Was it like Alien? Like chest bursting monster
It
horror?
did feel like it at sometimes.
Yeah, well, there we go. See, so you can draw upon a story sometimes, like reference a movie or a TV show to try and explain something to someone more quickly than explaining the ABC to it. In fact, interestingly, this happens a lot in movies as well, right? If you think about the whole character motivations of the characters from Stranger Things, the Netflix series set in the 80s, it all references the fact that they play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and they're into popular culture like Ghostbusters and Star Wars and E.T. And those are also ways they cope and explain the supernatural activities around them. So they use a lot of Dungeons and Dragons language. So in a way, that fictional story is performing the act of kind of explaining the world around you through stories.
Yeah, that's completely true. Like, for instance, when I was driving here, it was very 50 Shades of Grey.
Okay, 50 Shades of Grey, from what I know, is a story about S&M? Sadomasochism? 50 Shades of Grey, right?
That is what it's about, but I was talking about the clouds, Craig.
The clouds.
The clouds,
Oh, right.
yeah.
The clouds were 50. So you were... See, again, I think you're missing the point. You're like one of those students you've probably been teaching over the last 3 weeks, pushing buttons. So another example could be The Matrix, for instance, because there's many scenes there where Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne's character, is trying to explain to Neo what's going on, and he references that it's like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz moment, as Neo's becoming aware of the fact that the real world is just a fiction.
Which is, of course, true. So that's how it's related to this reality.
Yeah, well, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole of exploring the truth of the Matrix and, conspiracy theory style showing moments where you've had the black cat glitch in life. But we'll leave that. We'll set that aside.
Okay.
How would you respond to that as a teacher when you're wanting to deflect a tangent and get back on the main topic? You would just say, "It's a good point. Let's set that aside for next week."
No, I'd say that was rubbish. Get out.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we're using pseudonyms like Lord Taylor and Dr. Taylor. Okay, great. So anyway, that was my question, right? Why is that we use a lot of, isn't it interesting how often we fall back upon fictional storytelling devices to explain real world occurrences?
Can you, say anything that you yourself have used?
Well, I often annoy people that I'm around by trying to squeeze a conversation into but I do it in a kind of funny way. Like I'll be talking to someone and he's explaining it and they'll say, "Yeah, can you tell me that in terms of the hero's quest journey?" Right? Yeah, you're telling me what happened today, but it's really boring. Can you please retell that to me as the hero's quest? Your Luke Skywalker starts. So yeah, it is. Well, look, I mean, I some ways I think it does work, right? So I was looking into this a little bit, and there are moments where, maybe you want to create some meaning or coherence about something which is going on in life around you. So what I want to experiment with, there's 2 things I want to do right now. One is experiment with my abilities to use a new feature on any website, which is to be able to create a read aloud section. So I'm going to use a read aloud section to play a quote from the psychologist Julie Beck, addressing this idea of why we use narrative storytelling devices to explain meaning and coherence.
What do you mean by read aloud?
Well, let's find out.
Okay.
Here, it's just setting it up.
As psychologist Julie Beck says, a life story doesn't just say what happened, it says why it was important, what it means for who the person is, for who they'll become, and for what happens next.
So life story, right? So if someone asks, what's your life story? You're going to try and have a beginning, middle, end to that, probably.
That's true, yeah.
So let's have a look now at the other aspect to it. which could be to express and communicate. We might just reference a movie or turn it into a story with a beginning, middle, end. Much like we're talking about with having a hook to start your story, right? Someone might be switched off. Like you're at a dinner party and you're wanting to impress people at the dinner party. You don't just want to blurt the middle of an interesting anecdote out. You want to start with a hook. Have you ever wondered why I'm a hero, right? Sorry, that wouldn't work. Or have you ever? So you start with a hook, like a question, right? Anyway, we'll explore this in more depth in coming episodes, I'm thinking, because I do think anecdotally most people would reflect. Maybe they couldn't have a specific example, but they might be able to feel there's something that I get it. I get where you're coming from. A little bit. The old classic, always Saved by the Bell, or bluesy vibe in this case. News segments. What I want to do is break down a couple of news stories now.
Okay, cool.
And then apply this theory, which we're talking about. So we've talked about how storytelling is really important, and the theory I want to talk about is this idea of
Are you trying to find something? Or?
No, I've got it. Don't spoil the suspension of disbelief.
I'm sorry.
In this case, suspension of disbelief that Craig is all-knowing. According to this author, Christopher Booker, who wrote this book, The 7 Basic Plots, Why We Tell Stories, he broke down the entirety of storytelling into 7 genres, 7 dominant forms of telling stories. So what I want to do before we go into these news stories is break down what these 7 conventions are and then discuss each of the news stories in terms of what story they're telling.
So is this sort of like one of these is going to be the hero's quest?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like
that's right. Yeah,
that
they're
sort of
archetypes
field,
of classic archetypes of telling a story. Yeah, hero's quest. Anyway, let's do the first one.
Okay.
I'll play it using the computer just to, get a bit of, richness in the audio sphere that's hitting people's eardrums. Here we go.
Overcoming the monster. The protagonist sets out to defeat an antagonistic force, often evil, that threatens the protagonist and or protagonist's homeland.
Okay, so that's the first one. The first one is overcoming the monster.
Overcoming the monster.
And you can think of movies like Jaws, right? Classic movie there,
Yeah.
where the monster is the big shark, and our heroes, Brody, police officer Brody, or Sheriff Brody, I forget what police qualification he had.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, wow! But you get it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, have you seen Star Wars?
Of course I've seen Star Wars.
So the monster in that case, in the first movie, could be considered...
Yoda.
I was going to say Death Star, maybe,
Okay.
or the Empire. How about the Terminator, right? The monster in Terminator.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yep, the Arnold Schwarzenegger T-600, or whatever variation it was, is the monster. Harry Potter? You're a huge Harry Potter fan.
Of course,
What is the overcoming the monster narrative of Harry Potter?
Overcoming his teen angst and ego.
See, credit there in terms of, abstract conceptualization.
Voldemort.
Thank you. Gosh dang it. You really have been surrounded by, what is it, your 8s?
Years,
possibly?
9s and 10s.
9s and 10s. Oof.
My apologies.
That's all right. This is like
is me now.
a
It's never
therapy.
gonna change.
We're just workshopping this. Anyway, overcome the monster. Yes. So that's the first basic plot type. Overcoming the monster. Any other films that come to mind in terms of any K-pop tunes which feature overcoming the monster as their lyric?
I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, if you're listening later from 5 to 6, Taylor's got about 45 minutes to come up with some songs matching each one of these. So we'll have an Overcoming the Monster one. Anyway, continuing now to the next one.
Rags to riches. The poor protagonist acquires power, wealth, and or a mate, loses it all and gains it back, growing as a person as a result.
Yeah, I like how rags to riches can include acquiring a mate. Which sounds very biologically deterministic, right? It's like, yes, my genes have continued. I have become rich in terms of the genetic pool I'm bequeathing humanity. What are some rags to riches stories that you have? I'll give you the first one. Cinderella, obviously,
yeah.
right? So she's literally the servant to her brutal stepsisters, and then she goes to the ball, meets Prince Charming. Yeah, we all know the story of Cinderella. Any other things that come to mind? Rags to riches?
What about that one? I can't remember what it's about, but I can't remember what it's called. But it's about the woman that goes into a store and doesn't get
Pretty Woman?
served. Yeah, Pretty Woman.
Yeah, Julia Roberts. Who's the male lead in that one? Richard Gere. Rocky is another one, right?
Willy Wonka.
No. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, not Willy Wonka the figure.
No, but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate
Yeah,
Factory.
the story. Yeah. Good one. Let's go. So yeah, that's rags to riches. So it's a pretty. I reckon there's a lot of rags to riches in K-pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Humble beginnings. In fact, probably if you were to break down interviews that K-pop groups give, they would probably refer to one of these in their origin stories. Like, can you tell us a bit about yourself? And they'll say, well, I overcame a monster. Or I'm definitely rag to riches. Anyway, let's go for the next one. So this is number 3 of the 7.
The quest. The protagonist and companions set out to acquire an important object or to get to a location. They face temptations and other obstacles along the way.
Yeah. So to get us going, an example of the quest, obviously Lord of the Rings, right?
Oh yeah.
They are setting out to dispose of the Ring of Power.
Yes.
Wizard of Oz, right? Dorothy travels into Oz and then needs to make her way back home. Yeah. Any others come to mind? Finding Nemo,
Yeah.
right? He gets kind of pulled away by that current,
Yeah.
right? And then has to find his way home. Or Marlin, the father,
Yeah.
is really his quest to find Nemo.
Yeah.
Literally, Finding Nemo, the name, is a quest name.
Indeed.
Title. It could be Questing Nemo. That wouldn't.
No. Different ones. The Hobbit,
Oh, yeah.
in the same vein. I'm trying to think of one that isn't like specifically, like either branded as a quest or like where heroes going out on a quest.
Yeah, kind of fantasy film, yeah.
Oh, there's got to be like even ones
Da Vinci
like,
Code, right? It's a kind of investigation, but he travels around the world.
one I was thinking of
Yourself?
was She's the Man.
Whoa, I've not seen that one.
That's where Amanda Bynes dresses up as a man in football to be able to play football or something like that. I can't remember, or to get into a school or something like that.
So there's a
And
mission,
So there is a mission, a quest.
and there's obstacles hindering that. Yeah, that could work. Moving on then to the next category.
Voyage and return. The protagonist goes to a strange land, and after overcoming the threats it poses or learning important lessons unique to that location, returns with experience.
Very similar to the quest.
Yeah, but at the
different.
same time, it's very like you could almost put the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit into that one as well. However, at the end, Hobbit goes out and returns like the
Yeah.
same.
And Lord of the Rings starts with a mission intro, right? They have a specific mission to destroy the Ring of Power. Probably similar to Wizard of Oz, like her mission is to get home. So it does feel like, there's a specific mission, whereas maybe Voyage and Return involves an element of accident, or the hero kind of has to go on this, like there's a
It's more like a personal.
yeah. So Alice in Wonderland,
Yeah.
right? She trips into this hole. I mean, she's following the rabbit, but it's not like she has a mission to transport herself to another world. She falls into that space. Lion King, right? Because the Simba character, like he leaves his community and so he ventures to a strange land, meets the people singing the song Muchada Cantata. No?
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, thank you. Great. I knew you'd get it. Back to the
Timon
Future.
and Pumbaa.
Okay. You're fluent in Lion King. Back to the Future would be another good example of Voyage and Return. So Marty McFly travels back to the future. It's not really a mission. He's not on a mission to go back to the future. But nevertheless, he goes back and is in a strange land, and he has to overcome various threats by Biff and returns home a changed person. Avatar, E.T., The Martian would be other examples of Voyage and Return, you know.
But what about with ones like Interstellar? Because he returns and he's the only one that hasn't changed.
Oh, right, yeah, physically, but mentally.
I suppose,
Yeah. All right, so let's have a look at the next category. Was a bit of a surprise to me because the rest aren't specific genres, right? It's not like we've got horror or something. But
Okay, yeah.
this next one is a specific.
Comedy, a light-hearted story that involves misunderstandings, confusion, and mistaken identities, but ends happily with the resolution of the conflicts.
Yeah, so it's given comedy an entire story of itself to say, you know, you end up with these stories which are just funny ones, right? where it's humorous and there's a happy and cheerful ending at the end, right?
I don't think comedy needs to have a happy ending.
No, I think there are examples which definitely upset that. I mean, you could say one of the examples actually that ChatGPT generated was Monty Python and the Holy Grail, for instance, right? I wouldn't say that's a happy ending because the cast will get arrested by police for murdering a character, right? Or murdering, you know, a historian that comes up halfway through the film. So they don't end it with a happily ever after deliberately, very postmodern. And again, this is the criticism of this schema, right? The seven forms, I mean, it works as a broad brushstroke, but when you start drilling down, you can see that they're very reductive and very simplistic. But they're a good start to start.
Because the one that immediately came to my mind was Shaun of the Dead.
Right, yeah, and at the end of that, it's a bittersweet ending, right?
Yeah.
Where his best friend's been turned into a zombie, but hasn't been killed, and instead is playing video games with him. And they've turned the rest of the zombies into kind of like
Workers.
variety show contestants. And I guess it's a cheerful ending in a way. You laugh at it in a way, but so comedy's interesting. It's almost like, you know, who's naming all these categories, but then he had films that he couldn't really place within any of these other categories nicely.
But even with Idiocracy, that still ends on a pretty low note, because the whole quest of that is to find a way to get back home. They can never get back home.
No. But again, you know, I can't remember doesn't he become the president or something at the end? What is his? I can't recall.
Yeah, I think he becomes the president.
Yeah. Because the examples I give it here are Some Like It Hot, the classic movie, Billy Wilder movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Mr. Bean's Holiday.
Yeah.
He finally gets
Bean
to
stuff.
Cannes.
Yeah.
And to the beach.
They have the Hangover, Bridesmaid, and Borat for reasons.
Okay.
I mean, the thing about that collection of movies is they're so different, right? Some Like It Hot, Monty Python, the Holy Grail, Groundhog Day, Hangover, Bridesmaids, and Borat. I mean, there's no comedy kids movies, for instance. Like I was thinking, the Mr. Bean movies are a much nicer fit.
Yeah. Because they do end up getting resolved. So it fits well
and
within
they're
that.
kind of family movies, which I think does fit the comedy angle more strongly because you're unlikely to have a sad, depressing ending.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go for category number 6.
Tragedy. A serious story that involves the downfall of the protagonist due to a fatal flaw or external force. The protagonist usually suffers or dies as a result of their actions or choices.
That's interesting, yeah, because I think the radio drama we've been listening to, Sorry, Wrong Number, is a tragedy in this setup, right? That she clearly does have some flaws in terms of her dependency on her husband and the fact she's an invalid at the bed, and her desperation to reach out and contact people is kind of passive while it's taking some action. Nevertheless, yeah. In terms of examples of tragedy, they give examples like Titanic. Who dies at the end of Titanic, the movie? Well, actually, a lot of people die.
Yeah, I was going to say the band.
Who lives is possibly an easier question. Because, yeah, that is tragic, right?
Yeah.
Like, everyone on the Titanic, not everyone, but many, many people die, including our wonderful hero, Jack.
Jack.
Yeah. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy. A lot of Shakespeare. Hamlet.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, yeah.
Gladiator.
Not seen that.
Oh, wow. Well, I won't spoil it then. The Godfather Part 2.
I assume that the main character died.
Oh, dear. Requiem for a Dream. They have
Oh,
Esmond
right,
Weston in
yeah.
it,
The whole thing's a tragedy.
They don't
there.
die right at the end, do
Well, I
they?
think
It's the one about the memory wiping. Right? Or am I thinking of something else?
you're thinking about something else. Requiem for a Dream is like they take a lot of narcotic drugs and end up dying.
Oh, okay. Well, it conforms to the tragedy, nevertheless. then.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
All right. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. The tragic story ends with the protagonist, so the hero or the person we're seeing as the main figure, suffering or dying as a result of their actions because of some fatal flaw they have. Rebirth, the final one. So we'll hear now the final of the 7 basic storytelling structures.
Woo!
Yep. Oh.
Rebirth.
Yep.
The protagonist undergoes a major change in their personality or outlook on life, usually after a period of darkness or imprisonment. They emerge as a better person with a new perspective.
See, if someone asks you how is your...
Overcoming the
Oh,
monster.
sorry.
Jaws,
Yeah, no, we've
Star
done that. We've done that. Thank you. It happens every episode. If someone asked you how was your day and you said...
Like
Rebirth.
a rebirth.
Yeah, that would be... Wow. Wouldn't you say, tell me more?
Yeah,
Or would you say, I'm a bit busy?
probably the second.
It was a rebirth. Okay, so some films which are classified as rebirth stories. Beauty and the Beast.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And I guess the rebirth structure there is the Beast character finding love and being rebirthed back to the... I think it was a prince?
Yeah, I think.
Or a royal guy?
so.
And haven't been changed. Yeah. So happy ending. A Christmas Carol.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Where do you think the rebirth works with A Christmas Carol? Obviously, but where?
Scrooge.
Scrooge, yeah.
Yeah.
His character starts off as a miserly, old, crotchety guy. And then at the end, through the tragic, I guess, encounters, the ghosts of... What was it? The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future
Yes.
show to him. He is rebirthed into a happy ending.
This is a tangent, right?
Oh, please.
But which is the best Christmas Carol?
Oh, Muppet Movie.
Oh,
Christmas Carol. Yeah. Is it Michael Caine's in that one, right? I think it's been a while since I've seen it, but what about you? Best Christmas Carol.
I can't remember which one it is. It's the black and white one from like 1926.
Yeah.
Always watch it every single Christmas.
Oh, really?
So good.
Well, very similar to A Christmas Carol in a way, because it's black and white, is It's a Wonderful Life, the Jimmy Stewart
yeah,
movie. Yep. Similarly, yeah, he's visited by a ghost that shows what would happen if our protagonist had not been born. And the world is a worse place for it. So he is kind of rebirthed in terms of his pessimistic outlook.
Yeah.
The Matrix, rebirth narrative there.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Neo, I guess the character of Neo is one of a rebirth, a character that is able to break out of the shackles of the world he thought existed and rebirthed into the real world. Shrek. Shrek. Where's the rebirth narrative in Shrek, do you think? Rebirth. A story of reinvention and renewal. Is Shrek reinvented and renewed through the stories?
Well, his what's it called? His outlook, I guess, on life is
A little bit like Scrooge at the start, right?
Yeah. But
he's
it's
mean.
It's mainly Princess Fiona.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because I think a lot of people discount the significance of her character and actually the strength of her character. Why would you say Princess Fiona has a more interesting rebirth narrative?
When she becomes
She's waiting for
comfortable.
the prince. Yeah,
When she becomes comfortable
Yeah.
being her ogre self.
that's right. Yeah, and that's such a more I think that's a very powerful story in terms of because she's waiting for Prince Charming, and the idea is that she's completely hated that side of herself. She literally says, I think, and through it she kind of flips that Beauty and the Beast narrative. That instead of the beast being the body to disown, disclaim, and leave, it's actually making peace with that and becoming whole. Frozen.
Frozen, yeah.
Yeah, rebirth there. I guess it's the character, the older sister character, right? Who's rebirthed.
Elsa.
Oh, you're good. How is Elsa's character rebirthed? Reinvented, renewed.
Is it Elsa or is it Anna?
Anna's the one, I guess, that starts the movie by performing the classic Disney female tropes of falling in love with the first person she meets.
But then she realizes that protecting her sister is an act of true love.
Yeah.
So that's her rebirth, I think.
Yeah, kind of. And in a way, that sisterly love, like I guess for Elsa, it was the fact that she'd hurt her sister early in life and then never been able to show emotions.
I suppose that's also rebirth as well.
Yeah, that. But I think Elsa's a more complicated story in terms of the rebirth she has. It does blossom into a happy ending, obviously. So.
What about Encanto?
I haven't seen that one.
Mate, you're missing out.
It's a lot of rebirth going down.
Yeah. It's about family generational trauma.
Is this the Mexican one?
Yeah.
Or
It's not
Spanish?
Mexican. It's
What's the setting of it? It's like got the city of
it's
the
South America, but I can't
some-
remember where
the
it is.
dead is one. The Festival of the Dead.
No, that's different.
Okay.
That's Coco.
Okay. Which is the South American one?
Both of them.
Okay. What was the title?
Encanto.
Encanto. All right. I'm just thinking with
La
my
Familia
keyboard.
Madrigal.
Really? Do you speak
No.
non-English? Encanto. Right. So it came out in 2021. It's an animated comedy film.
It's fantastic. I don't know how you haven't seen this.
Oh, man, we just went through a list of films you haven't seen.
I suppose.
7.2.
But have you
out of 10.
heard of
Yeah, it looks
We Don't Talk About Bruno?
No. Is that a reference I should be making more
Oh
often?
my word.
What is it I should be saying? We don't talk about Bruno.
We Don't Talk About Bruno.
Great.
This is a travesty.
Wow, it's on my list. That's a storytelling device, I think. Saying it's on my list.
Have
What
you
is
have
it?
you seen Moana?
You're saying this is like a tragedy, right?
Have
Yes, I
you
have seen Moana.
Yes. Did you like the music in Moana?
I don't remember the music
Okay.
in Moana.
Well, then you might not like Encanto.
I remember the Mikato Takato song from Lost King line.
What?
Yeah, my narrative telling story devices are falling apart. Anyway, so yeah, they're the 7 key narrative tropes in storytelling. And now we're going to apply these to news stories. The first news story I want to investigate doesn't seem to be telling a story which will fit nicely with this format. It's
Okay.
the Australian Classification Board will be expanding the consumer advice information for movie ratings.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the moment, of course, when we want to buy a DVD or Blu-ray or any, this is specifically about movies at the moment, it'll come with that G classification or PG or
So they want to
MA.
add a new one.
Yeah.
in.
So what they've been doing is they've been conducting a survey, and this is part of a ongoing classification rebirth that they're doing, right? So they're renewing and in ways reinventing aspects of the current classification scheme. They've surveyed 2,000 Australians over the last year, asking them what more details they would like and how they can better modernize the current classification scheme in Australia. So that now has been completed, and an article in ABC News has posted how they're going to be now addressing and integrating these new changes in classification. Some of them, so they've added these new categories of. So not new category, we've still got the PG, MA, but new descriptions that'll appear
Right.
next
So
to
like horror
violence,
themes,
horror, yeah.
violence. Yeah.
So now we've got animated violence,
I thought that was already one.
family violence is being
Okay.
added,
Yeah.
blood and gore is being added,
Makes sense.
mental health themes is being added, and the category or the concept, the term bullying is being added.
Oh right.
To the list. And these changes are, at the moment, only going to apply to movies, not TV shows or games. And they're part of the government's intention to reform, if we're talking about a story, to rebirth the national classification scheme in two stages. So the second stage they're going to be moving on to is going to cover computer games and publications. So this scheme is regulated. It's going to be regulated. What material we can engage with, what material might become banned or permissible in public exhibition. So I did ask ChatGPT how this could be reframed as one of the key stories. But before I do that, let me just play. So the MA 15 plus movie classification is going to include new categories such as strong animal cruelty, strong injury detail, and strong comedic violence.
Okay. Right.
Strong comedic violence. I guess it's interesting because in a way it's reflecting maybe some changes in film genres, right? We've had a lot of strong comedic violent films.
Yeah.
Don't know. Hangover,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. And even like as we said before, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Because that is comedic violence, but it is quite confronting as well.
And for the R18 plus classification, they're adding new terms such as high-impact bullying, high-impact drug reference, high-impact sexual themes. High impact. How was your day today? High impact. I don't want to hear what the themes were, please. We're having dinner. That might be the... Anyway, so let's see. So then I asked ChatGPT how we could reapply that rather dry news story into one of the 7 storytelling conventions. Right. So this is what it's come up with.
In this
There we
case,
go.
the protagonist could be the Australian government or the classification board, who are trying to update the movie rating
Okay, yeah, so it's a bit boring. It does start off as if this was a movie. Who good guys and bad guys are. Okay, so continue.
system to meet the expectations and needs of the consumers. Their goal is to provide more information and transparency about the content of movies.
Oh, hold on. Right, sorry, I didn't play the bit that was important. They see it as a quest plot and a rebirth plot, which I picked up on as well. So I
Okay,
definitely
yeah.
saw it as a rebirth plot. I guess the quest plot, they're seeing is that, if the protagonist is the Australian government and the classification board, great characters they are, they're on a quest conducting surveys.
Yeah.
Right. So the quest narrative involves setting out a mission. So the mission is, update the classification scheme for movies. the obstacles and temptations they faced. I'd love to know what the temptations that faced the Australian Government Classification Board. I don't know, man.
Taking,
R18 plus classification, try to sell them
Yeah.
some bride? I don't know. As a story.
Sell them some bride.
That's how it works in the criminal world. I'm gonna sell you a bride. Yeah. So So I like the rebirth approach.
Yeah.
To that. In fact, some of these terms I think should end up as hashtags for news stories to make it more easily for me to engage with, like hashtag rebirth. Like if they had the title of this Australian Classification Board to offer expanded consumer advice for movie ratings, hashtag rebirth. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Hashtag tragedy. Tragedy.
Do you have your playboard, your mix?
I do, but it's not plugged in, is it?
All right. Well, I've anyway.
Oh, did you? Oh, sorry, I didn't see.
Okay, next article, headlined, Ford to keep AM radio in cars after pressure from lawmakers. This article is interesting to me because it's showing how old media, kind of people want to leave old media. So the whole AM radio, I listen to AM all the time. Do you listen to AM radio?
AM radio,
often?
yeah. Because that's what ABC Hobart's on.
Yeah, ABC, a lot of news. So it turns out that in the US, Ford and many other companies in their new cars, particularly their electric cars, have removed AM systems from them. That there's no AM system in those cars. So the American government's placed pressure on them and has created a bill called the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act, which has argued that AM radio is essential for emergency alert systems and public safety, right? Especially in rural areas. Similar in Australia, right? That AM system is vital when there's, certainly in Australia, a bushfire. It's often the source people go to get updates and listen. So in the States, they've mandated this requirement. I don't know what Australia's... I mean, we barely have we have no electric car manufacturing here, to my knowledge.
No.
Right, anyway, so this is something going on.
I've seen
in
a
the
couple
States.
of Teslas around.
Whoa! Let's talk. Is that a comedy story or a rags to riches narrative? Could be there.
No.
Tragedy, personal tragedy that you do not have.
Unfortunately, not. Just rags to rags. Because I don't have enough money to afford a Tesla.
In terms of what are the 7 stories this might fit in with? Interestingly, ChatGPT said it could be an overcoming the monster story, which I hate. I mean, I'm not going to get it to read it because basically all of the narratives it spat out for this story made Ford the heroic protagonist.
Oh dear.
Right, even though clearly they're not in this story.
Yeah.
They're the belligerent. Well, sorry. Some people could read this story and say Ford have kind of dropped the ball by not including AM systems as an important kind of, as the bill has stated, a required emergency system. Anyway, so instead they've said that Ford is the protagonist, who's had to overcome pressure from lawmakers, the villainous monsters, lawmakers in public opinion, what monsters they are, and has had to overcome those monsters and figure out a way to put the AM system in their car, right? Which I think just, is completely tone deaf in terms of, maybe I guess, yeah. The other story they have is that it's a quest story. Again, Ford is a heroic protagonist that needed to embark on a quest to create new vehicles that had AM systems in them. Or it's a comedy, which possibly is the only one that makes any sense to me, is that... it's about a misunderstanding and confusion between Ford and its stakeholders. Ford assumed customers didn't listen to AM systems, but the lawmakers have argued that it's vital for public communication and safety. Ford, however, misunderstood this and has removed AM from all of its systems and now has to go back on that and redeliver it. So I don't see where any comedy is yet, but it does say it ends with a happy ending.
To be fair, I don't know what it is, but like the receiver in my car doesn't really work, so I have to play my radio through the internet just to get local radio.
Oh wow! In your car?
Yeah.
So you're not even using the car AM/FM system?
Yeah, I can't even listen to Edge Radio. It just says.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So I guess you got to replace that system.
or just keep doing what I'm doing, because it's really
I
good.
don't know. You did into your
There's an app, and it's called something like Radio World, and you can there's
yeah.
like a globe, and you can spin it, and it's got every radio station in every country in every world.
They're useful, but I don't want to chew through my data on my phone.
Fair enough.
So, okay, AM systems are going back into electric cars in America. The next one that's showing us how the media landscape's changing is a story on crack.com talking about how Adult Swim is going to start an hour earlier because no child in the world watches cable. Right? So this is how Adult Swim had a time slot specifically there at 6 p.m. Oh, sorry, at 8 p.m.
So kids wouldn't watch
Yeah, it used to be at 8 p.m. Yeah, because the idea was that kids could watch it. But now survey data that, and this is in America, but Warner Brothers have done survey data to show that kids just aren't watching cable at all.
Yeah, because they're just
anymore.
watching on demand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that 8 p.m. start time no longer is needed because the statistics show that there's no chance of kids watching earlier. So now they've pushed it to 7 p.m. On May 1st. Yeah. So, yeah, an hour earlier.
Do you watch Adult Swim?
No, I've seen some of the shows there.
Like what?
Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Space
Oh,
Ghost
yeah.
Coast to Coast.
Have you seen
Lab.
the Eric Andre show?
I have. That is fantastic. Yeah. And I often will, my son will often send me clips randomly during the day. I love the movie that he did, the Bad Trip movie.
I didn't know he did a movie.
Oh, right, you've got to watch it. There's a great gorilla scene in the zoo.
Okay.
I won't say anymore.
Okay.
Right, well, we're 10 to the hour, so I want to get through two more stories.
Okay.
This one's great because this one is titled "Sonification Makes Astronomy More Inclusive and Helps Scientists Fine-Tune Celestial Observations." This is a story about how, it's from the ABC, talking about how they've been able to create sound from the telescopes that they've used to see the far distances of space. They've been able to convert that into a soundscape. Right, and this article goes into quite a bit of depth in terms of how this can assist us approaching understanding the cosmos from a different sensory data set. But what I love about this article is it's included examples of the sound. So let's listen now to the data sonification of the black hole at the center of the Perseus galaxy cluster. It's great. This is the black hole at the center of the Perseus galaxy cluster. Do you reckon you could sleep to this? What would you dream?
Exactly.
I feel like we could just leave this playing in the background.
Yeah.
It's kind of Cthulhu-like. And they've got another audio sample here of the sun sonification. So this is sun rays. You getting sunburned?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we're off there. So in terms of how we can make sense of that article, it breaks it down in terms of saying it could be a quest story or a voyage and return story, where you've got astronomers that are using this data sonification thing to explore and understand the universe. So it's a kind of quest for knowledge and discovery story, which is very much how the article reads as well.
Yeah.
The article also mentions how some astronomers use sonification for outreach and public engagement activities, which can be seen as a voyage and return. So in this sense, the astronomers are going on a voyage to a school class and sharing that knowledge with the school students to inspire them and returning home. Yeah, so voyage and return. I mean, if someone asked you how your day was and you said it was a voyage and return narrative, I think that would be quite interesting. You're not hacking your phones again?
What? No, my phone's just messing up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Voyage and return. Going to the shops.
Yes. Last story I want to do. Sorry, yeah. Last story I quickly want to do is titled why Gary's mod recently decided Nazi glorification crossed the line. And it's this article talking about...
That's strange, because I used to play Gary's Mod a lot.
Yeah.
And that used to crop up a lot by people.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, I loved about this article. So it's talking about how the developer Facepunch Studios has recently added a new rule prohibiting the display of swastikas, the Nazi salute, or any other glorification of Nazism on their servers, even for role-playing purposes. And it talks a bit...
Role-playing as a Nazi. Fantastic.
It talks a bit about how this issue has become more and more worse, but how, when Gary's Mod was first set up, it had a kind of Wild West vibe, anything works. But now as the guy's grown up, he's begin to recognize how he doesn't really want this space to be the Nazi space.
Yeah.
And again, what's interesting about the article that's from Ars Technica is that it references this Urban Dictionary phrase called the Nazi bar problem. Have you ever come across this? So the Nazi bar problem is when you own a space that a forum or something or a website, so if you set up a space that lets any groups of people in, such as in this example, Nazis, you'll literally drive everyone else away from your space. So that what started off as a normal, ordinary space will become essentially a Nazi bar. So it's not only Nazis, it can be fascists, white supremacists, meth heads. Sorry, it goes on for cryptocurrency fanboys. Some group will be so odious to others that they will drive everyone else out of your space. So the only solution that you can enact is to ensure they don't come to your place in the first time, even if they're nice and polite, and follow the rules. Because while they might, their friends won't. Those friends have a history of driving other people away from your space. So yeah, the idea here of the Nazi bar problem is, so for instance, in Gary's mod, he said it's inclusive, it's open to anyone, come along and play. So they started doing World War II kind of reenactments, and then suddenly there were a lot of Nazis showing up, and people didn't really want to go to Gary's mod if it was going to be full of Nazis, and they
As someone who used to play Gary's Mod a lot,
yeah,
it wasn't people doing, like, historical reenactments.
What were they doing? They were basically fascists.
Yes. They were kids just messing around, but being incredibly inappropriate with it.
And then, so the idea being, they would drive everyone else away. Yeah, the normal kids, normal players, just get driven away from this toxic space once you've allowed Nazis in. Well, that's the show for. And in terms of what genre that fits, in terms of how it could be classified, it was classified here as comedy.
I don't think so. I think it's more like
actually,
Rebirth.
Yeah, there were three. Let me scroll down a bit. There were three categories. It was overcoming the monster,
or maybe overcoming the monster. Yeah.
They had to overcome the monster of dealing with Nazi glorifiers and taking action. It was Rebirth, so turning Gary's Mod from being a space that had been corrupted by hate and violence into a space that could inspire kids, and comedy, because the article had a number of funny phrases.
Yeah.
We'll get around to it maybe next week, or maybe I'll bomb into the K-pop show coming up next. There was an interesting article on ABC News about Australians that are part of the K-pop industry.
Yeah.
And in terms of what narrative the article was setting up, it was very much a rags to riches story, right? Kid from Brisbane makes it big in K-pop world. Jake Sim.
Is he a relation of John Sim?
Enhypen.
Sorry.
Sounded like a
Enhypen.
German phrase. Einheim. Anyway, sorry, gosh. That's been Media Mothership. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. It's been Craig, Dr. Craig, joined by
Dr. Taylor.
Oh man, I thought you would have. You haven't been rebirthed as a doctor.
I will be. I'm going to get my PhD.
I think you're going to overcome the monster. For that to happen. Anyway, show notes will be available on this episode at www.mediamothership.au. And next week, we're going to further explore how narratives can be used to make sense of the world around us. You can listen to previous episodes on YouTube, Twitch, and at edgeradio.org.au. Reach out and get in touch with us via Facebook or Discord.
And if you want to buy me a Tesla, please just do that.
That sounds like a comedy, or maybe Rags to Riches story.
Rags to Riches.
Rags to Riches. Well, yeah. Keep listening to Edge Radio. Coming up next is K-Pop Unlimited. Anything to say about K-Pop Unlimited?
Yes, it's going to be a remix show. Everything is going to be a remix.
Ooh, we got any Psy?
No Psy.
Oh. Any... all right, well, I'll wait and
Hitchhiker?
listen.
Yes,
Hitchhiker. Great. So keep listening. We'll have some Hitchhiker from K-Pop.
Listen back to all your favourite programs on edgeradio.org.au.